Hey, what's up, comrades? Moving on. We're in the we're now going to participate ourselves in the Murder World arc. If you don't know what Murder World is, we talked about it briefly before. I think with Havoc and Spider-Man, if I remember correctly. It's Arcade's whole shebang where he locks people in like a fun house and tries to kill them or whatever. Anyway, this arc starts with Colossus, who's got a lot of issues because of the Magneto fight. And so they're trying to test him in the danger room, but he's like giving up and not giving his best. Cyclops is like, I don't know what to do. Wolverine's like, I know what to do. So he breaks the controls of the danger room, then he rolls up and goes inside this contraption that's trying to close in on Cyclops or Colossus, and he has to use his strength to stop it from crushing him and Wolverine. So he does, because he cares for his friends. And then Cyclops comes down and he's like, Wolverine, for breaking all this stuff, you got to fix it. And Colossus is like, thank you, Wolverine. I knew I could do it, but I just need a little help. And Wolverine's like, rah, 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 rah. As they leave, Colleen Wing is hanging out, and she's like, what's up, lover boy? Banshee and Nightcrawler, meanwhile, are working on the Blackbird, which is all jacked up. And the things are going well there, so Colleen and Cyclops decide they're going to go out on a little datey poo. We then get a shot of Lilandria and Professor X out in the Shi'ar homeworld while she's getting coronated and going through all her parties and whatnot. Meanwhile, in Scotland, Jean runs into Jason Wynegard. Now, who's Jason Wynegard? Jason Wynegard is actually Mastermind, and he's continuing from the classic edition side stories of seducing Jean by just being nice and handsome and everything that she could possibly want. And her and Moira talk about how handsome he is and his fine mutton chops and whatnot, so they can utilize the power of the Dark Phoenix to take over the Hellfire Club. Back to Salem Center, Cyclops and Colleen are, they're on a date. They're having like soda pop, ice cream sodas or something, whatever. Anyway, Wolverine drives Aurora. Meanwhile, Wolverine drives Aurora down to Harlem. This is where she was born and her parents met. And after he drops her off, he sees Mariko going into a building. So he runs up, but they force him to not go in there, and he's like very concerned. Aurora's walking around Harlem looking beautiful, like a princess with her white hair and her fine coat and whatever. And she tracks down the home she grew up in, and there's a bunch of kids, and they're doing drugs. And so they try to fight her. One of them stabs her in the hand, so she freaks out and uses her, her mutant powers to send them back. One of the boys is trying to sneak up behind her with a knife. Who comes in? Luke Cage, as Power Man, and busts him up. And then him and Misty Knight talk about the kids and Harlem and all that good stuff, and they're kind of like all sad, and they make her go to a hospital to get her hand fixed up. Back at the Salem Center, Cyclops is saying goodbye to Colleen Wing, who's got to head back into town to do her thing, which is like her whole mercenaries for hire thing or whatever she does. And she gives Cyclops the key to her apartment and says, come by anytime you want, lover boy. Into the prologue, we see Black Tom and Juggernaut. They're back and they're alive, and they're on Arcade's plane as it's flying through the sky, and they're talking about how they're going to spend millions of dollars to get the X-Men, and if it doesn't work, I guess it's a full money back guarantee. And Arcade's like, oh, don't worry, they're already dead. The side story is weird. There's like a Halloween party, everyone's dressed up like things, and Nightcrawler's dressed up like the devil, and so they're just having like a fun party, and part of the game that Jean Grey came up with is that everyone's got to pretend to be something, and they, try to figure out who each other are, and they just have a bunch of random people at the party too. Nightcrawler has a lot of guesses about who's who, and they're completely wrong. There's this cute cat lady this girl dressed like a cat from the musical Cats. And then we find out from somebody that there's a woman here whose ex-husband wants to kill her, and she's dressed like a ghost. Meanwhile, Cyclops is seeing this very seductive, like Arab-looking costume woman, and he follows her, and then he like kisses her, and then he's like, oh no, but I have Jean. What am I supposed to do? Oh, I feel so terrible. Something. Meanwhile, the trap has been set and sprung, and the ghost has been stabbed, and everyone's freaking out. And then this clown's trying to run away, but he gets stopped by Colossus and Wolverine, who are dressed as people that were not who Nightcrawler thought they were. So he takes a hostage, this witch lady, and is about to stab her, but then Jean and Colossus and everybody, they get him, and he gets in a lot of trouble. Then the Arab lady reveals to Scott that it was Jean the whole time, and he apologizes that he had lust for another woman, and she's like, whatever, stop being stupid and kiss me. So then they go kissy kiss, and the Nightcrawler hooks up with the witch. The end. We pick up a few weeks later with Colleen and Cyclops. Well, actually, we pick up with Spider-Man. And Spider-Man's going around. He's thinking about stuff. He sees Cyclops and Colleen on a date, and Cyclops is thinking to himself how much he likes Colleen and how, being from the orphanage and everything, he's never really had people, and that like he's now had like two different women he's like in love with and he's spending time with. The first being Jean, and the second Colleen. And then we see one of Arcade's goons with his like traditional garbage truck come by and sweep up Cyclops and Colleen. And Spider-Man's like, wait, I've heard that noise before. It's like me and I said Havoc, but it was Captain Britain, and he mentions that here when they were picked up. So swings back, figures out he finds out that he was too late, so then he goes to call the X-Mansion to warn them. Meanwhile, at the Lincoln Center, Colossus and Nightcrawler are with their dates, and they're going to Professor X's private box, and they get caught by Arcade's like Girl Friday or whatever, and taken off in a helicopter. Next up is Wolverine, who's on a date with Mariko. Everyone's having like dates. It's like date night apparently. And he's thinking about that and thinking about how like a girl like her is different than any other woman, including Jean, that he's ever been with, and that he has to like change who he is somewhat to be with her because she's a special lady. And then he gets picked up by the truck as well. Back at the X-Mansion, Sean gets woken by the phone call, and he goes to answer, and he gets zapped in the back. Aurora, who's upstairs and just getting out of the shower, is like, what is this? Sean, why aren't you answering the phone? So she goes down to answer the phone, and as she picks it up, she gets zapped in the back. And Spider-Man is like, hello, anyone? And then hears someone's voice is like, oh, thank goodness, Cyclops and Colleen got picked up by Arcade. And Arcade's like, I know, I'm Arcade. Dun, dun, dun. Spider-Man like smashes out of this phone booth, and he's like, no! At Arcade's Murder World, we have all the X-Men. They're all in separate like pinballs, and they get blasted around this like pinball machine, and they all end up in different areas based on their I don't know, whatever. Cyclops has a decision. The wall's caging in, and he has 3 doors to open, but if he chooses the wrong door, he'll die. Arcade mentions that all the doors are wrong, but there is a way to get out of there. We then go to Colossus, who gets interrogated by like a fake KGB officer about being a traitor to his country. Wolverine is in a house of mirrors, and in this house of mirrors, all these like androids of Wolverine, these different weirdly shaped androids, start popping out to fight him. Nightcrawler is in a dark room, and then it bursts in light, and there's like these murder cars driving around, and he's teleporting around, but he gets knocked by one. Then to Sean, he's in like a weird thing, and there's like toy planes trying to bomb him and blow him up and stuff. Aurora is in another room where the floor caves in, and she falls into the water, and as she tries to like kind of circumvent her way out of there and fly around, there's like gusts of wind, and she tries to blast something, and it reflects the electricity back to her, and she gets supposedly knocked out. Back to Cyclops. We're bouncing all over the place. He's like, all right, Arcade's an asshole, so I'm not going to believe anything he says. So he just blasts out one of the side walls. And when he does that, it goes right into the part where Wolverine's at, and it kills some of the clones, or the androids. So between the two of them, they're able to kill the rest of them. And he's like, all right, let's go this way. Right as they're about to exit through the door, Wolverine gets punched right in the face by Colossus, who's now going by the proletarian because he's been like brainwashed. And then Arcade's laughing. We see Amanda, I think it's Betsy and Colleen, and they're like in these packages, like they're like, they're like in a package, like a present package with ribbon and all. And Arcade's just laughing it up and talking about how either before Colossus realizes what's going on, he's either going to kill the X-Men or the X-Men are going to have to kill him, and he loves it with all his heart. All right, so the secondary story focuses on Colossus specifically. So Colossus is being carried by storm to his homeland so he can visit his family, and he's thinking he might stay here because he gets, he's tired of being away from his family. And he runs to Ileana, his little sister, and she's like, Pietro! He talks to his parents, and they have a meal, and he's so happy, and he shows them drawings of all his friends and their adventures, and his dad is like, quite the story, and he thinks to himself, like, yes, Dad, there's no way my dad would believe all the crazy stuff I've been doing. And then he asks about one of his friends, and he says he wants to go visit him, and his parents are like very sad, and Ileana's like, I'll take you, big brother. And he's like, why is everyone sad? Because he's dead, fighting in Afghanistan. Sad times. They talk about a lot of people died and all this stuff, and then they hear someone needs help. There's a tanker that's tipped over, and it's going to explode. So Colossus turns into Metal Colossus, or Pieter turns into Colossus, goes and moves it out of the way so that it's not going to hurt anybody. Everyone's celebrating him as a hero. And then this asshole, Alyosha or whatever, who's got like missing a leg and an arm, he comes over and he calls him a traitor and says it's your fault. If you were here, we wouldn't have all been injured or died, and yada yada yada. And then they arrest him and take him to like a camp. And Alyosha's like, "You're a fuck you, I hate you." Like KGB are sending a colonel to take care of you. And then this guy shows up, Colonel Vazin, and he's like, "All right, come with me." And so he drives Colossus off and pulls off the road and gets him out and cuffs him. And Colossus is like, "What's going on?" And he's like, "Look, man, we can't send superpowered people to war. We made a deal with America about it, so it's never going to happen." And Colossus is like, "I didn't know that." It's like, nobody knows it. It's very hush hush secret. And then he talks about the X-Men and all the stuff they're doing. And essentially, this is a really good, some really good writing. And he's like, "Hey, man, you got a couple choices. You can go back to prison. You can't stay here. You can either go to the Gulag, or you can go back to the X-Men. And my suggestion is go back to the X-Men." And Colossus is like, "What about my land?" And he's like, it's awesome. It's great that you love your people and stuff, but you're doing more good as a hero for the whole world than you're doing here. And like, you can't fight in wars and stuff. So what are you're just gonna farm or whatever? And he's like, "Honestly, you can't stay here. You've already been designated a traitor. If you send letters to me, I'll make sure they get to your family. But if you go back now, your parents are probably gonna call because communism and such, and you've been designated a traitor by the government, and you're gonna do more harm than good. So really, the best thing for you to do is go back to the X-Men. That's where you're needed," is what he says. And then you can serve the people there by being a hero to the world more so than you can here. And then Colossus just kind of stands around and smells the wheat and is the sunset in the background. Good stuff. The last issue of the Murder World arc here, Uncanny X-Men number 124, I think. Yeah. Starts off where we left off. Colossus is fighting and Arcade's laughing, and then the girls are sitting around and Colleen's like, "Fuck you, if I was out of here I'd mess you up real good. What kind of hole did you drag yourself out of?" And Arcade tells the tragic tale of his origin, which he was a Beverly Hills kid and his dad was an asshole and his dad was cutting him off because he was a piece of shit, and so he killed his dad. And he's like, "I like being a murderer for hire, so I'm going to keep doing that." So he does, and he gets bored, and then he creates Murder World, and he's like, "That's fun," but then I got bored, and then he gets hired by some guys to kill Captain Britain. So I thought Arcade was around outside the X-Men, but it seems like he really is like a X-Men villain. I guess he's also a Spider-Man villain as well, because it's a Spider-Man book that just happens to have Captain Britain in it, where he gets introduced. But after that, he was like so excited. And so when Juggernaut and Black Tom came along, he was like, "Yes, I will do that. Excellent. Everything's awesome." Back to the fight. Colossus is doing a good job beating up the X-Men. He tosses Wolverine to like another room, and then he tosses Cyclops in another room. And then he's like, "I am so glad I get to do what the Colonel asked me to do, and I must not fail destroying the X-Men." Meanwhile, Storm is underwater, and she's having a real struggle. Then this whole arc. Then we switch to Nightcrawler, and he's having struggles, but then Cyclops is there, so they're able to kind of like help each other out. Then we switch over to Sean and Wolverine's able to like start destroying stuff, and he breaks through one of the walls, and dun dun dun, it's Magneto and the Hulk. Oh no! Back to Aurora. She finally like takes off a bunch of her clothes and is able to like swim down and find like a power grid, and she starts over zapping it with like her electrical powers. Cyclops just completely destroys all the cars and sends Nightcrawler to go find Arcade as they kind of go through the tunnels. And then Wolverine and Banshee keep fighting Magneto and Hulk. Nightcrawler pops into Arcade and is like, "Ta-da!" And he punches out his like lady friend and then blasts his stuff, but then they release nerve gas, so he gets knocked out. So Cyclops finally finds Wolverine, and Banshee, God, it's like all over the place, destroys the Magneto robot. Wolverine has destroyed the Hulk robot at that point, and then the walls burst open and water comes flooding in, and it's Storm, and she needs CPR immediately because she's not breathing. So Cyclops rejuvenates her with mouth-to-mouth. But oh no, here comes Colossus. Colossus comes rolling in, and Sean's like, "Hey man, good seeing you." And then he gets knocked the fuck out. And then Wolverine goes and he gets knocked out. And then Colossus grabs Storm by the neck and Cyclops. And then they tell him how much they love him and how much they're a family. And Colossus is cured with the magic and power of friendship. Of course, you dumb motherfuckers. That's what it always is. It's excellent. At that point, everyone's together except Nightcrawler, and Arcade presses one last button, envelops everybody in like a pinball machine. It goes ping, 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 and then they pop out in this like this theme park kind of area. And then when they get out, they see these presents come flying down, and it's the ladies and Nightcrawler, and then there's a note that says, "Round 1 to you, X-Men. Till next time, love Arcade." And Wolverine's like, let's go find him. And Cyclops is like, bro, what are we going to do? Tear apart this amusement park? Like, we were bouncing around that thing forever. It could be directly below our feet, miles away. Who knows? Let's just take our win that we all survived and move on with our day. And Wolverine's like, murr, 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 murr. The side story is funny. It's kind of irrelevant. Oh, it's super relevant in that it's a story about arcade, and it's him at night, and he's going through his arcade, and there's like a program, and it's targeting him, and it's like him and his kid and his dad coming in telling him he's worthless and all this stuff, and he's like, the fuck, who made this program? And then he gets through it, and he's like, I made this program. Like at like 2 a.m. while I was asleep. Damn. It's kind of a worthless throwaway story, but that's the end of the Murder World arc. And it was fun. I like Arcade. He's kind of a kooky guy. Talking about it's much more difficult because it's like this story, then this story, then this story, then this story, and it's dumb. It doesn't go anywhere, and it has no relevancy to anything. But it's like funny to see all the little cutesy things. And I actually like the B plot from the second issue with that Colossus. That was very good character development stuff. But there you go. Next up is going to be Proteus. We'll get to that next week. And go ahead, like, share, subscribe, and comment. And I will catch you all later. Bye.